I'm going to talk to you about what the hidden curriculum. I think that the word knowledge comes in twisting. So I talk about boarding schools and I talk about knowledge. Knowledge is also a dynamic thing in terms of what is it that we need to know? What is it that we need to impart? It's nice to see the two members of the Generation Z. I'm going to be knocking you guys about a bit, so don't take it personally. Yes. But let's face a few facts. Compare life to 100 years ago. 100 years ago, the concept of a hot shower was one beyond your imagination. We have a shower every day, we don't even think about it. 100 years ago, 99% of the people in the world were born and died within 100 kilometers of where they were born. Now 99% of the people usually move hundreds and thousands of miles beyond where they go. 100 years ago, you were lucky if your child survived the age of 8. Now longevity in life of the lifespan of people is increasing manifold, even in the so-called developing countries like ours. So there's so much progress that has happened, there's so much knowledge that is going on, and I'll speak more in the Indian context. We produce some of the brightest brains in the world. Goes without saying, it's not a cliche, it's a fact. We're running most of the organizations in the world. We have many centers of excellence. Being an Indian is kind of associated with a certain amount of intellectual acumen. Now I'm going to ask you a very basic, or just pose a rhetorical question. Are we happier? More importantly, for all this intelligence, are we a better society? Do we take care of each other? Do we have consideration for the people we see and meet on a daily basis? How many, you may, but I'm talking about as a society, how many of us have had this experience on a regular basis where you leave home for 45 minutes, when you come back, you're like, this country is never going to change. Why is that? Is that because of a lack of physics knowledge? Or because we didn't study statistics hard enough? Or perhaps, we didn't give enough importance to the chemical equations in class, or maybe algebra could have helped us be better people? The irony of, well, it's not an ironic thing, it's a natural sort of a culmination of our historic past, the recent 200, 300 years, is that deep down in our minds, we are so enslaved by the white man. Then anything that they do is better than anything that we've ever done in our past. Yeah. Including speaking in English. I'm part of that generation, so I'm not being a hypocrite, but I just recognize the fact. The problem is that unless the West legitimizes and recognizes something that is actually a part of our culture and our history, we don't want to know about it. So yoga had to go all the way to LA and then come back here before we started doing it. Right? Similarly, boarding schools are the modern version of what? A good Kurukshetra is a war. From whatever you heard, but they're not battlegrounds, no. But yes, I know what you're talking. Essentially a Gurukul. What was the concept of a Gurukul? If you were supposed to be a ruler, if you were going to rule the country or your kingdom, you had to be worthy of it. And to be worthy of it, you were sent away at the age of 8, 9, 10, away from your comfort zone. And your education system, therefore, academics was only a small part of it. That guru taught you the values of life. They taught you respect. They taught you responsibility. They taught you how to be a good human being. They taught you how to care for people. And after 10 years or so, when you came back, The theory was that you would have the skills and you would have the mentality of being a ruler. So I'm going to segue now to our boarding school culture. And again, let's define what a boarding school is. There are lots and lots of schools, this and boarding. It's not a boarding school. That is essentially an additional revenue stream, right? A boarding school, to my understanding, is one which is exclusively residential, where the entire schedule, the entire program is geared towards enhancement of every child's every facet of the development while they're there. I'm talking about an ideal scenario. I'm not, let's not pretend every boarding school is doing that, but we must distinguish between schools with hostel facility and actual boarding schools. I'm privileged to be head of a boarding school, a pure boarding school, perhaps the largest residential boarding school in the country. We have 850 boys in our school, not one day boarder, on a campus of 200 acres. And we just celebrated 150 years. I have students who, when I joined 2 years ago, I'd be sitting at lunch and they'd say, "Sir, I'm the sixth generation in my family. My great-great-great-grandfather was given at his graduation, the Viceroy gave him the best students thing in 1895, and that thing is on our wall." So there is this whole thing on legacy, which can at times be a burden as well, as we all know, but also puts a certain amount of an onus on us to be more than just providers of knowledge, and I mean information, really. So how do we do that, right? So what are the skills? Let's briefly talk about what are the skills that are required in the coming generation. And we can talk till the cows come home about this, because everybody has a view on AI and technology and what it's going to do, blah, blah, blah. Someone thinks, robots are going to choke us and then rule the world. Others think that AI must be avoided at all times. My perspective is very clear on this, that we have to master technology and not be mastered by it. It's very simple.
Yes.
Right? And if we take that perspective, it's a great tool. And any resistance to AI, A, is futile. And B, it's the same kind of conservatism which I can think accountants would have done 30 years ago, I don't know, when Excel came out and they wanted to do their accounts on paper and not Excel. But it's going to make life easier. I have adopted AI in my life to the extent that I require, and I've seen that it is a far more efficient way of doing things. It saves a lot of my time. And that's good. Of course, as an educator, we have to see that it does not come in the way of a student's learning, rather it enhances the possibility and avenues of their learning. That's a challenge. But why I was talking about AI is that as AI becomes more and more flawless, it is going to fundamentally change the job market. We all know that. I mean, how it's going to do it, at what rate it's going to do it is up for debate. I don't think anybody can really debate the fact that the skill requirement is going to change over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years radically. Beyond that, unless someone claims to have a crystal ball, I don't think anyone can really say what's going to happen. So, the thing is that then this creates a panic. It creates a panic in my teachers, for example. They feel that they're going to become out of a job. There's so many people who feel that they'll be out of a job and the job market will change. I don't want to get into the profundity and the complexities of impacts on society and economy by artificial intelligence. That's a different subject. But one thing is sure, right? The last vestige of humanity is going to be humaneness, right? Artificial intelligence will take over calculation. It will take over clerical jobs. It will take over pedagogy, perhaps, in teaching job. The last thing, and I can't see it happening in the near future, hopefully not in my lifetime, but the last thing it's going to be able to do is what humans can do best. So in an age where you have a technology which is going to pretty much take over the, the quant side of things and the technical side of things, it is imperative that you focus on what it can't do, and that's being human. Right? And being human is not wearing a T-shirt of Salman Khan, being human. It means providing that to society, to individuals, which a machine can't. Now, a lot of people come and say, counselors, and we have this thing, and online counseling, blah, blah, blah. Great. But I still feel, and I think, I hope we agree on this, that eventually humanity, there is something to be said about person-to-person contact, right? I mean, we don't have a great data pool on this, but just look at the 3 years of COVID and what it has done to children for those who are still facing the impact of no social contact for those 3 years. Both to their learning ability, more importantly, to their confidence, to their social skills, you name it. Depression is increasing manifold. Why is that? If presented with the limited data set that we have, the verdict is quite conclusive. And machines can do a lot of things very well, but humans are required to be the basic. Which I want to connect that again in the Indian context. I was reading somewhere, and it's always, just to give you a bit of a context, I joined a boarding school myself when I was 9 years old, and I graduated from a boarding school. After that, I went to Delhi University, then I was there in the hostel, and then I was living alone with some friends, blah, blah, blah. I did my MBA in London, then I lived there for many years, and I came back, and then at the age of 40, I took over. I changed, and I decided to get into education. And in the 9 years I worked since then, I worked in 4 different really good schools, but one's a complete boarding school, one was a DN boarding school with an IB curriculum, the other was an IGCSE startup of a franchise of one of the best schools or more prestigious schools in the world, and now I'm here. So I have seen education across different genres in both as a student and as an educator, or as a teacher now, as a principal. And we keep focusing on people's skills or knowledge of their job. But if we look back, and I'm not talking about the university level, right? I'm aware I'm standing at a university, and at a university there are certain great technical skills which has to be imparted. I'm talking about the development from a child to an adult. If we all look back and think of the people who made a difference in our lives, it won't be the smartest mathematician. It may be a math teacher. It won't be the person who knew the equations back. It'll be that one person who at one point, maybe when we were doubting ourselves, just very innocuously, while crossing us in the corridor, put his arm on our shoulder and said, listen, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. You need to focus, work hard. If you need any help, you come to me. I tell you, in the 9 years that I've had the privilege of being in this field, I meet kids now who come back to me and said, I met this guy who is just in his 5-year law program. And I met him at a social occasion somewhere. And we were standing around and, the usual banter that boarding school communities do. And then as I was going away, he came aside because I think he was really embarrassed to say this in public. And he came and he touched my seat. And he said, sir, I wanted to tell you something. I'm just about to finish my law degree. And in the MOOC, there's something, the MOOC court or whatever. And I won so many prizes and all. So I said, that's great. And he said, sir, this would have never been possible if it wasn't for you. I said, really? What did I do? So he's like, when I was in grade 9, you were teaching me English. And I used to be very bad, and I never used to read anything. And you gave me a yelling and you told me that you say you want to be a lawyer. If you want to be a lawyer, start reading. And then you forced me every break. I used to go up and I should show you how many pages I've read. I said, that started my reading habit, and I blah, 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 whatever. And you realize what a huge impact a statement that you don't even remember making can have on people. And the converse of that is true as well. One of the things I am very vehemently against in my school, and I do not tolerate, is if I hear of a teacher telling a kid, you will never amount to anything. I tell them that, look, you're not a god. And their destiny is not in your hands. If you can't be positive, certainly do not put self-fulfilling prophecies of a negative nature in the child's mind. Through that, what happens in a boarding school is that the trust factor between a student and a child, and a teacher, is so much more. These seem like cliches, and if you have not lived in a boarding school, you will never understand that. What I suggest is, I'm sure some of you know of people who have lived in boarding schools all their life. You will see them, they're still obsessed with school when they're 45, 50. And a lot of my friends' wives and everything, when they get together, they're like, man, you guys, I've heard the same stories 100 times, but yet you just go on and on.
Mayo wife.
Oh, okay.
And I can vouch for this.
Correct.
They go back to 1986.
Correct. Yes. Thank you for validating my statement. Yeah. And a lot of people, like when I was doing my MBA, there was in an Indian group was there. They were like, I don't know what you guys, but you please talk about school so much. I mean, they never talk about school. They're like, school, yeah, fine. You know, after school I did undergrad, then I worked at Morgan Stanley's, and I did this and I did that. You know, school is somewhere in the recesses of their mind. There may be an individual teacher or so who definitely has made an impact. So my point then is that how do boarding schools shape how we become? They shape our whole identity in a few particular ways. And I didn't want to, these are, again, we've heard it so many times that the degree to which they're true sometimes becomes lost. So I'm just going to talk about 2 or 3 things, and I'm going to give you specific sort of examples of that, and then, maybe we can just have a couple of questions if you like. So talk about independence, right? That's a big one. I just finished with a round of interviews with children on a slightly different. It's funny, their parents tell them what to say in the interviews, right? So you have these 11-year-old boys, and you're like, why do you want to join Mayo College? Sir, to be independent, and I want to be more disciplined. I'm like, hang on. Which 11-year-old boy wants to be more disciplined, sir? And don't tell me what your parents told you. Please tell me the real answer. But so independence is this big cliche about things. Let me tell you how independent thinking happens. In fact, I just wrote an article which came in the education world about the subtleties of emotional development in boarding school children. Now imagine this, okay? You're a 12-year-old child. Your parents live far, far away. You have a group of 5 friends who are very close. You've had a fight with one of them. He's not talking to you, and he holds a lot of social clout in your group. That night you had a fight, the other 4 have also said they're not going to talk to you. The next day at breakfast, you got to go and sit on the same table, because those are assigned seats, with the same 5 boys. How are you going to maneuver that social dynamic? The choice of mummy, I'll sit with you, or papa say, koi baat nahi beta, dusre friend bana do, is not happening. At the age of 11, you are learning how to negotiate conflict. You're learning how to manage relationships. You're learning how to handle the dynamics of a group. It's no surprise then, that when you grow older, these things come very naturally to you, because by the time you're 18, you have already faced 100 situations, as opposed to the average group. please understand, this is not a day school versus boarding school kind of a conversation at all. Anybody you ask me that should I put a child in a boarding school and day school, I say it's entirely a personal decision based on circumstances in the family, parents, the time, quality time that they can give, and blah, blah, blah. So, I'm not saying that everyone should be a boarder, that day schools suck or anything. I'm just talking about these schools as such. Please understand that. So there is that, and the opportunity for that in a day school is so much more limited, particularly now, where I had a lot of parents tell me this. But yes, we had a PTM yesterday. That's why I had to come late last night. The biggest problem, it's not a problem, it's a good thing. One of the problems of joint families is that the same despots who ruled us when we were kids with an iron fist have now become the angels of mercy for their grandchildren. So, I'm like, I often say that our generation was the worst generation in the world. Because when we were children, all the power was with the parents. We grew up and all the power is with the kids now. So after दोनों side से पिट गया मैं फिर. Side, right? So quite often the indulgence, and again I'm putting this in the context of Indian socio-economic changes that have happened in the last 35 years. I left school in 1991, and which was the year Manmohan Singh became the finance minister and Narasimha Rao opened up the economy. Of course, especially all the students probably were born much, much later. But it's very difficult for you to imagine the radical change in India between, let's say the 7 or 8 years when I was in, the 9 years that I was in boarding school, and then the next 9 years. What has happened, therefore, is in 2015, 2020, and particularly holds true for Gurgaon in this area, there is a huge generation of people who got wealth from nowhere, from selling land and doing whatever it is. It is literally the grandfather was selling milk on a cycle, and the grandson is being given a 7 Series BMW at the age of 18. Right? So therefore, the economic growth has not, unfortunately, been parallel with the cultural and I don't want to sound polite to others, but let's just say you become rich, but you haven't got the class and the culture yet. The nuances of what should come with being in a privileged position, that privilege is taken more as a weapon. And it's because it's like, you know what? I was disenfranchised all my life because I didn't have enough money. Now I have so much money, my grandson is going to get everything he wants. And to hell with anyone who says he can't do anything. Right? So that is what also boarding school protects you from. You'll be surprised when we have our entrances, when we have the new intake in April. Our first month is geared towards entirely a non-academic program. Of course, we have our classes and all, but the emphasis is very much on getting people to understand that no one gives a damn how much money you have. There are people with hundreds and hundreds of crores in our group. There are also government officials who have, or military people who we give a 25%, 30% bursary to as well. So there are also boys who, whose parents want them to get this education, but it's just about in their reach. So any increase in fee becomes a bit of a problem for them. So it's a nice range. So that is the second point I want to say, that there is a certain kind of equality within the premises where it doesn't matter how much money you have and how rich you are and who your parents are, I'll give you a small example. A year and a half ago, I wouldn't name the state, the Deputy Chief Minister of the state was in asking. And so there's this other boy who I had to suspend for some bad behavior, let's just say. And the guy comes to me, and the guy's father comes to me in my office, and he says, I know that, in Hindi, he's like, I know the Deputy Chief Minister and this, and I will get him to speak to you. I said, sure, do that. I said, do you want me to call him? I mean, his son is here. Yes, yes. So I said, why don't we do one thing? When you go out of the office, give his office, this said, since you're so close to him, call his wife or whatever. He came back after 15 minutes and said, sorry to be, because the Deputy Chief Minister's office had also been suspended 2 weeks ago and was back. Why am I saying this? Oh, I'm only saying this because within the walls of schools like this, because of our 150 years, because of the legacy that we have, because of the power of our network of alumni, we are to a great extent impervious to a lot of the pressures that other schools come under. No matter how big a shot you are, there's always some big shot who has been to our school who can counter that. So we can create in this highly charged sort of everything is being defined, Gen Z, by relationships and money, and it's no fault of yours, by the way. I blame ourselves. In that thing, there are very few vestiges where you can still have a shot at boys growing up without "Janta hai mera baap kaun hai" kind of that kind of. Nobody cares. Really, nobody cares. The third thing, and I'm surprised, because I only realized this impact through the parents itself, is that last year I banned smartphones on campus, right? And I have done many good things, I would like to think, in school. Some I've got a bit of applause for, some I've got, yeah, well, I only got one standing ovation. So, is that when I made that announcement? And I was looking at the parents and I was saying, you hypocrites. You want me to be the villain. You're very happy that I made it, right? But the moment they step out of campus and go to your house, you're going to throw that. So this actually, and again, this is not one of those Uncle G vibes where, "Arey, bachche aajkal ke mobile phone pe lage rehte." It's not that. It's very clearly the lack of depth in this generation is purely because of social media.
True.
Right?
Well, yes.
And this generation has been brought up with it. It has affected cognitive behavior. You see, the problem is, it came up suddenly in 2007. We all got wrapped up in it. There was not enough time, not enough reason perhaps, for anyone to do fundamental research to what it does, what impact it has in the long run. Forget about the young kids. Look at it, the impact it has on us. I mean, I can tell you very honestly, I used to, earlier, I used to watch all kinds of movies, like different European films. I had a lot of friends also who had this, they used to tell me, like really slow movies. Now I can't watch films anymore. I'm like, the film is going on as soon as, the car starts going, I start quickly seeing a couple. It's what it's done. So now imagine being born in a generation where when you're 2 years old and you start going, "Arey yaar, isko iPad de do yaar." Right? This is what is happening.
Correct. Exactly.
And then when the kids have no sense of connection, have no sense of, or their development of attention span has not developed, how can you blame them for it?
Yeah, true.
So I used to say this always, and I think it's becoming more and more evident, that we have given a loaded gun to our children, basically. We've given a loaded gun to them, and then we're surprised when they shoot themselves or us with it. So one of the biggest advantages, again, these days in boarding school is that to a great extent, and see, this is the fine balance we have to keep, because I'm a big believer in technology and the users of technology and the fact that, this generation, if they're not fluent with technology, then they're going to be left behind. They'd be Philistines, right? But therefore, it's a huge challenge of how do we empower them in technology and yet protect them. And I'm using the word protect, and protection is usually done against the wishes of the children for anything. How do you protect them against the harms on their mind and their souls by social media? because the anonymity that that social media provides has made it a powerful tool for every coward and bigot in the world. And as you're growing up in a child, particularly if you're living in a family where both parents are working, which is often the case, who is your influence? Some random guy sitting in Czechoslovakia is telling young men what being masculine is, right? And that is what is defining them. Some random woman whose only claim to fame is bearing her body to the whole world is defining what the etiquettes of relationship should be. That loyalty is a defunct concept. That it's okay to cheat.
Yes.
We have the lowest common denominator has become the highest potent factor on social media. Our schools manage to protect them from it to a great, great extent as much as possible. That every time I meet my parents, every time I meet our parents, I always urge them. I said, look, it's not easy, I understand. But we're doing the hard work for you for so many months. If you have to do anything for your children, please just do this. Don't give them access to social media and there's only so long we can protect them, I understand that, but I also feel that by the time you're 17, 18, you can process things better than you're 10 or 11. How much time can I speak for another 5 minutes? 5, yeah? Okay. I'll just share with you, because I think in the interest of a meaningful conversation, it's important to be honest. And I don't want to, this is not a pitch about how great our school is. Our school is as good as most good schools are. And we face the same problem. I tell you, there are 2 or 3 incidents which over the last year have happened of grade 7 boys, particularly because that's just when about they start hitting puberty and, that kind of, they move from childhood to adolescence. The kind of behavior is, I'm not going to get into the detail. It's shocking. Shocking. One guy actually sexually propositioned a teacher. And the most gentle kid who has never had a problem with anything. When they come to my office, after the housemaster is dead with it, blah, 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 they come in and I look them in the eye. It is a 7th class boy. And I ask them one question straight. When did you start watching pornography? Not do you watch pornography, but when did you start watching pornography? So we never circle. And even when you come to the principal's office, you're kind of shaking. I said, no. I'm needing you 1 minute. Tell me the truth, or this conversation ends and I call your parents. Within a minute, I've always got the truth. Boys of grade 4, grade 5 are being exposed to pornography. 80 to 90% of them, if you think it's not happening to your child, you're fooling yourself. Because you may provide the most ideal scenario, and you would be doing that. Every parent wants the best for their child. But when they go back to school, you need one of those boys I told you about, mere grandson ko koi rok nahi sakta. He will dictate the agenda of the school. By 6th, 7th, if you're not watching pornography, you're not watching, or if you're not, at least, you knew about it. I'm not, So my point is, look at the danger that this poses. I don't want to seem like, I'm an angel or a messenger of doom or something like that. But unless we recognize the degree, I think at the moment still, parents are kind of looking at this thing with, अच्छा नहीं है यार क्या बताऊँ ये तो पढ़ाई नहीं करता हमेशा that kind of, without realizing, you see there has to be some reason, and I'm sure a lot of you have read Nicholas Aid's The Anxious Generation. If you haven't, I recommend it to you. It's very well written and is very, very deeply researched, and he's a government eminent talker of this subject. The incidence from 2007 to 2026 of teen and pre-adult depression, suicide, mental problems are up not 15%, not 20%, not 70%, close to, I don't know the exact figure, close to 1,500%. You do the math. You're watching that statistic thing earlier, right? You do the math. Now we can look at the data and say it's not convenient. The conclusion is not convenient. But I still want my daily dose of Instagram, so I'm going to ignore it. You almost work with your Instagram, by the way, you're an adult. But I'm just saying that, it has to be controlled for younger people. Right? It has to be supervised. And therefore, conversations with children have to happen. So what we do extensively is it's awkward for some people. But we do it all the time. We have regular, from the ages of 11, we don't call it sex education, but puberty workshops, what to expect, what are the thoughts. Because once kids, a lot of, and I can talk about boys particularly, you see, there's so much, there's so much confusing thoughts in your head. There's guilt, there's shame, there's curiosity, there's physiology, all kinds of things. Once you realize, if some adult says to you that this is normal, then the first thought in their head is, oh, I'm not the only one. That means it's not, Once you even achieve that, then there's scope for progress. So away from parents, and then what we do is that we follow that up with regular workshops, which are happening now at every level. I've even created a team from our grade 11 and grade 12 who go down to 7th and 8th and talk about the issues they have. And that's very helpful as well. So like I said, this is something I would talk and bore you on boarding schools for hours and hours. That's what I do. That's what I live. That's what I breathe. But I think we're out of time. So I'm just going to end it at that. I just say one thing, that the best place for a child is with their parents, right? But only if the parents can be parents in the true sense of the word. Right? If not, there should, I think boarding schools, a good boarding school provides a great place for them to still, in whatever extent possible in the world we live in, be protected from the excesses of our society that children are unfortunately exposed to at an age much before that they should. With that, thank you for coming on a Sunday morning. I hope